of this session, which is part of the 21st Conference of Australians and Constitutional Monarchy, is a superb constitution which could be better. And if you are, as I am, a listener to one of the highest rating broadcasters in the nation, and you can see that there are plenty of listeners to Michael McLaren in the audience, and those of you who are not available to listen at the times at which he is broadcasting, there is, of course, a large number of podcasts available on the 2GB site. And that program goes from 2GB to 4BC, the big station in
Brisbane,
the increasing station in Brisbane, and throughout what used to be called the Macquarie network, which is now, I think, the 9 network, is it not?
Yes, I think that's right. It changes.
And you will find that if you listen to the program, that Michael has an extraordinary depth and understanding of current issues, apart from a charming style and a very good radio voice. He's one of those radio people who not only have what they call a radio face, because he has a television face. Not many radio people translate well to television, but Michael does, and he is a regular, are you not, on the Alan Jones program. So Michael is a particularly wonderful person to have here, and he is one of the few constitutional monarchists in the media. So a superb constitution, which could be better. And in my discussions with Michael, I often like to rely on the wonderful words of two of the founders, Sir John Quick and Sir Robert Garran, who said this of our Constitution: never before have a group of self-governing, practically independent communities without external pressure or foreign complications of any kind, deliberately chosen of their own free will to put aside their provincial jealousies and come together as one people from a simple intellectual and sentimental conviction of the folly of disunion and the advantages of nationhood. The Australian Commonwealth, the fifth great federation of the world, came into voluntary being through a deep conviction of national unity. And that is a wonderful description of that act of union. No constitution, of course, can be perfect. And one of the matters which I've already raised with David Olsen was the fact that the South Australian Premier, they used to call them Prime Ministers too, before Federation, who went to the 1891 Convention, had a very detailed proposal. We know this because it was printed by the government printer in Adelaide. It was to bring direct democracy to Australia. Any bill passed by 2 houses of the federal parliament had to then wait while there was an opportunity for Australians to petition for a referendum. And just with 30,000 people on the petition, I assume that there would be real people on the petition and not those people who are on the electoral rolls, who are there to vote when they are not real people, but as they are today. But it was a wonderful decision. As I mentioned in the previous session, there are some weaknesses in the Constitution: a blind faith in responsible government, not understanding that the political parties, then really unions of associations of people, like-minded people, but who were still exercising independent judgment, who still voted on the issues and not according to the party line. Secondly, leaving appointments to the High Court to the absolute discretion of the government. And I promised there to mention an interesting story I'm talking more than you, which I shouldn't.
Good.
There's an interesting story. It affects us. It relates to the appointment of Michael Kirby to the High Court. Michael Kirby was the President of the Court of Appeal in New South Wales, a distinguished judge, certainly appointable to the High Court. But when the Attorney General of the day put his name to Paul Keating said, "But he's a monarchist," meaning I couldn't possibly appoint a monarchist to the High Court. So they went away and they thought about it, and they came back and they said, "Look, ACM, he wrote the charter of ACM. He said, ACM, without him will be nothing. They're a group of silly old people. They have no idea what they're doing. They're all loonies. Take him out and you weaken the constitutional monarchists." Keating thought about it. Well, that's not a bad idea, and he's a good judge. And so that's how Michael Kirby was appointed to the High Court of Australia, according to stories. Thirdly, we didn't introduce direct democracy. And fourthly, we should have written into the Constitution the fact that any powers not given to the federal government were reserved to the states and the people. And fifthly, not allowing the people or even the states to initiate constitutional change. But it is a good constitution, and what I wanted to ask Michael is, do you agree, Michael, that there are significant weaknesses, although it is a good constitution?
Well, yes, firstly, David, thank you for having me. Nice to be here with everybody. I agree, it is a sound constitution. It's served us quite well. Oh, do we? Should we try? Is that better? Is that good now? Yes. How's that? Okay, good. Yes, so just to repeat, I think it is a sound constitution. I think it served us relatively well. The weakness you outline, I think, is the main weakness, and it's become rather prevalent during the COVID circumstance, and that is that there is no provision, it seems, for citizen-initiated referenda. And this is something that would be completely feasible. It's been done in Europe, I think, since about 1878. In America, in certain areas, since about 1897, I think. And in New Zealand, in the last 20 years, 30 years. So it wouldn't be inconceivable that a nation like ours, with a constitution like ours, could accommodate that aspect of the people at the core of decision-making. And then you look at some of the decisions that have been made, they clearly haven't been made on our behalf or in our interest. And this is where a provision like which you've spoken to me about on numerous occasions, and I think it's needed, would come in very, very handy. And obviously during a situation like a global pandemic, it's difficult to corral the requisite votes to hold a vote. Mind you, they managed to have an election in Queensland, but there would be some decisions that have been made recently which the public would simply find anathema. And leaving that aspect aside, I think the other weakness that I've noticed, and I think you've commented on the show about this as well, David, is that those wonderful words you read at the start by Quick and Garrick obviously applied to an Australia that was led by statesmen at the time of Federation in 1901. I'm not sure we're led by statesmen today. And as a result, it's more important than ever that the public, the collective wisdom of the people, be corralled to hold those in power, and they've never had more power, to hold them accountable. Some of our institutions are letting us down. To again look at COVID, and you and I have spoken about this before, there are a range of checks and balances which we are told are in situ, and they are, but they're not working effectively. And you get some pretty daft decisions as a result. And the public then get disillusioned with democracy. And we look at, there's some young people here, which is wonderful today. We look at many of the young people, and their appreciation for democracy as a whole is weakening and weakening rapidly, particularly in Australia, but also around the world. And I think a lot of the problem there isn't so much that they distrust democracy, but they are increasingly distrusting the institutions which are in place that meant to guard the good running of democracy. the oils that are meant to keep the engine of democracy smoothly operating. And so if we can reform those, and having people at the centre of those reforms is key, and I think citizen-initiated referenda is important there, empowering the sovereign citizenry, then I think we're going to go a long way to strengthening overall what our democracy is and the way forward.